Welcome back, Hawkeye and college football fans alike, to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. This is my reaction and recap to Iowa's 31-14 victory Saturday night up in the Twin Cities against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. With the victory, Iowa improves to 3-1 overall, 1-0 in Big Ten conference play, while Minnesota drops to 2-2 overall, 0-1 in Big Ten conference play. And with that victory for the greatest, in my opinion anyway, the greatest rivalry trophy in all the land, the battle for the divine swine, what is Floyd of Rosedale. With Iowa's victory, Floyd is coming back home to Iowa City for at least one more season. Last year, Minnesota did defeat Iowa inside Kinnick Stadium, but Iowa is able to return the favor in this year's contest. Welcome back to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. I'm your usual host, Blair Parks, and I want to also welcome all of the Minnesota fans here to the channel. You are always welcome here, as of all of you college football fanatics and crazies. I know it's Monday morning. I'm a little bit late with this episode, but I've been very, very busy as of late with work and kids and everything else, the responsibilities I have. But it's great to be back with you, kind of breaking down this win for Iowa. I'm not going to say a big victory, but still a good victory at that. My initial thoughts on this game, this was a huge game, especially for Iowa, because if Iowa would have went up north, lost this game to Minnesota, at this point they'd be 0-2 this season in rivalry games, but then they would be at this point 2-2 going into a bye week, when next on the schedule is mighty Ohio State. More than likely then, after that game, would fall to 2-3 overall, and then everything that really was in front of them would have been lost. If Iowa loses this game, the potential record for a 10-2 or 9-3 overall record is really out the door. That's why this game meant so much. And I am not going to talk playoffs right now. I'm not going to talk about Iowa being a playoff caliber team because they are not at this point. Maybe we'll talk more come late October. But if they would have lost this game, any sort of hope as far as for a great season, a 9 or 10 win campaign would have been absolutely donezo. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. So that's why this was a huge game for Iowa. As far as what I liked about this game, I'm going to go ahead and point out some good and bad from both teams' perspective. I'm going to start off with Iowa's opponent, the hosting Minnesota Golden Gophers. Overall, I was very impressed with transfer quarterback from the FCS ranks, I believe from New Hampshire, Max Brosmer. Overall, played a very, very solid game. Overall, his numbers, 22 of 37 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions did play big into Iowa's hands, but for Mr. Brosmer, those interceptions did not ultimately cost Minnesota this ball game. It was other factors that went into it. So I really liked this transfer quarterback as far as his poise, and really against the best defense that he has faced up to this season. For the most part, he held himself very well. A very good showing, especially in that first half. But the second half, things definitely changed, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. Also, for Minnesota, wide receiver, Daniel Jackson. This guy was absolutely just all over the field. Ended up grabbing, I think, 9 receptions, 112 yards. Really was just all over the place. Just a fly in the soup of Iowa's defense in that first half especially. Whenever Minnesota needed a big completion, it seemed like Jackson was the one hauling it in. So very impressive game from Daniel Jackson. And also that Minnesota front seven. That first half, all right, the way it was playing out, Iowa got out to a 7-0 lead early in the half due to one of those interceptions by Max Brosmer. And then they rattled off 14 straight points, a 14-7 lead into the halftime locker room. But the Minnesota front seven really made it tough sledding, especially for quarterback Cade McNamara of Iowa. And I've got a little bit more to say about Cade's performance here in a little bit, so stick with me. But they really made it difficult for him to find time to hit his receivers, to really find any vertical passing attack whatsoever. So that front seven of Minnesota in that first half was really kind of living in Iowa's backfield. They only did record 1 sack on the evening, I believe. Let me make sure. Yep, 1 sack, but really the quarterback hurries and the hits, it was almost nonstop every time Cade McNamara dropped back to pass, especially in that first half. So I was very impressed with that Minnesota defense in the first half. But after that, I really honestly can say nothing really stood out for Minnesota in that second half. I mean, Iowa's defense completely just opened up and closed that vice grip, really put the squeeze like an anaconda on the Minnesota offense in that second half. Overall, I think Minnesota ended up with 280 some yards of total offense. Let's see here. Yep, total yards for Minnesota, 288, but they only gained like 65 yards the entire second half. I mean, it was difficult. And it seemed like Iowa's defense in the first half maybe in a way was kind of feeling out Minnesota's offense. So in that second half, it was really the tale of two halves. And that's kind of been a repeating theme for the Iowa Hawkeyes this entire season. Normally, they've played much better in the second half, but they've really been an either-or half team. I mean, they only really have played great ball for one half of each contest. So if they could just come out and put it all together, I think their success rate and probability is absolutely going to increase. But Iowa really seems to put it together, at least in one half, each and every football game up to this point in this young season. Now, for Iowa, the good that I saw, I mean, wow. You got to start with running back Caleb Johnson. I mean, this guy is an absolute beast. He is the man among men. I mean, the bell cow. And going back to what I said preseason, this was going to be Iowa's biggest strength. They have a stable of running backs. They have 4 who have legit experience. And they have a stud, deep veteran offensive line. And they're starting to flex like Arnold Schwarzenegger of old. I mean, Caleb Johnson's numbers from Saturday night, they pop out. Again, the guy continues to just be a wrecking ball. Overall, 21 carries for 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, average of 9.8 yards per rushing attempt. I mean, and he's doing this each and every game. I mean, and I'm telling you this right now, that if he continues to keep this up, and I think right now he's averaging close to 175 yards a game, is that going to continue throughout the entire year? I definitely don't think so. I'm not going to rule it out as a non-possibility, but eventually you're going to face better defenses. You're going to have a little bit of fatigue. So that average is not going to stay right there. But I'm telling you right now, Hawkeye fans and all you college football fans, that if you don't know about him, you soon will. Because if he's able to average 150 yards a game and rush for 2 touchdowns a game, he's going to find himself invited to NYC. He will then be a Heisman Trophy finalist. There is no doubt in my mind he will be there. All right. The question is, can he do that? Up to this point, he has absolutely put Iowa's offense on his shoulders, and he is not slowing down. And I think the bye week comes at a really good time here for Iowa, for all of them to rest up, refresh, and game plan for that big showdown with Ohio State next on the docket. So Caleb Johnson, I mean, absolutely, just a stud. I mean, the star among stars for Iowa. I mean, the offensive line continues to look very impressive, especially in run blocking scheme and technique. Pass blocking, they still do need to sharpen it up a little bit. There are some defenders who are getting in the backfield way too early. They need to give their quarterbacks a little bit more time to go through their progressions. But the Iowa O-line are stars as well, okay? There's no doubt about that. Now the bad. I mean, for Minnesota, already kind of mentioned, I mean, they just were completely taken out of the game in the second half. All right. They really just disappeared. The crowd was taking out of it. They were heading for the turnstiles early in the game in the second half. By the fourth quarter, maybe down to half capacity there at Huntington Bank Stadium up in the Twin Cities. But Iowa, I mean, the bad, I got to start off with the defense. Okay. Iowa's defensive backfield, the corners and the safeties, they continue to get beat down the field. I mean, there were a few big chunk plays that Minnesota was able to get through the air. I mean, yes, Brosmer and his receivers, they made some plays. There's no doubt about it. And that offensive line gave him enough time to throw. And that Minnesota O and D line, both very big and very physical. I was very impressed, too, with, that the fight that's happening inside of that telephone booth. It seems like Iowa and Minnesota always end up getting into that classic rock fight on the lines of scrimmage, all right? But they were able to get a couple big chunk plays through the air, and that is really what has hampered Iowa's defense here in the early season, especially against Iowa State. And then in week 3, last week's game against Troy, they gave up 2 touchdowns of 60-plus yards? That just can't continue. I mean, this is not the defense at Iowa that we're used to seeing. Iowa's front seven is very, very sound. I am not too concerned about the front seven, especially the linebacking core. I mean, they are next level, but they really need to sharpen it up and get back to basics in that defensive backfield. I mean, playing teams that can air it out vertically, they're going to take more chances against this Iowa defensive backfield. Jamari Harris continues to play next level. He has been an absolute stud the entire season for that Iowa defense in the backfield. But the other cats back there just continue to just give up these big chunk plays. And we're just not used to it as Iowa fans. We're not. I think last year, they only gave up 2 plays of 60 yards or more. And as I just said, they gave up 2 of those against Troy and 2 more against Iowa State in Iowa State's comeback win in that second half against Iowa in week 2. So the defensive backfield for Iowa has got to tighten it up. They just do. But like I said, in the second half, they did absolutely put the clamps on Minnesota's receiving core and their downfield attack. Another thing about Iowa's defense, and this was one of my 3 big concerns going into this season, and I shared this with you preseason on my Iowa Hawkeye preview episode, is that Iowa D-line, they're very physical, they tackle well, they hold their blocks, they stay in their gaps, but they continue to just not produce enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks. I believe they were only able to tally 1 sack again on Saturday night's game. Let me see here. Yep, 1 sack, and I believe they got 1 sack also against Iowa State 2 weeks ago. And I think that is absolutely helping out with opposing teams getting those chunk plays against Iowa's defensive backfield. The Iowa D-line has to get into the opposing offense's backfield. They have to produce more pressure. We all know that Iowa is not going to send a linebacker or send a corner every other play to blitz. That is not Phil Parker's style, Iowa's defensive coordinator. So those guys up front have got to produce more pressure moving forward. That will absolutely help against those chunk plays. They're just giving the opposing quarterbacks too much time to pick them apart in the defensive second half. They just are in that backfield. They got to get more pressure on the quarterback. All right. So that's the other thing that needs to improve. And speaking of improve, Cade McNamara, guys, I mean, I'll say this about Cade, our quarterback. He didn't throw an interception on Saturday night, and his numbers are not overwhelming by any means. Overall, he went 11 of 19, which that's just below a 60% completion rate. And to this point, Cade McNamara's completion rate has been very good. It's been that 65% or more, kind of that goal that you have for your quarterback. Hey, if you're completing 65% or better, that's getting it done. And for the most part, he's been doing that all season. But he continues to just put up very underwhelming total numbers. Like I said, Saturday night, 11 of 19, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. So he did take care of the ball, but finished up with 62 yards passing. And I believe at halftime, he only had 16 total yards passing. I mean, this continues to be, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Iowa is still having problems attacking other teams down the field. The wide receiver core, I will say this, they are not doing Cade McNamara any favors. They continue to not get any separation whatsoever, but Cade and Iowa just cannot push the ball down the field. There was not one throw of 20 yards or more airtime on Saturday night. There were only two that were 15 yards or more of airtime, and one of those was completed to Reese Vanderzee, one of Iowa's wide receivers. And I believe Iowa's wide receivers only had 2 receptions on Saturday night. Iowa must get the wide receivers more included in these ball games. Eventually, teams are going to load the box and say, Caleb Johnson, Kamari Molden, Jazian Patterson, LaShawn Williams, you guys aren't going to put up these rushing numbers against us. And they're going to make Iowa have to throw to beat them. That's exactly what Iowa State did in that second half when they made their comeback. Iowa has to push the ball down the field. I mean, they're not even doing that just to keep a defense honest. If you see one-on-one coverage, take your chance, at least to get in the mindset of that defense. But Iowa just is not doing that. And it's getting to be really frustrating. But before I get down and out, I do have to stop myself because Iowa's offense is leaps and bounds better than it's been the last 2 seasons. I mean, I just said Caleb Johnson is a stud. He's leading FBS Division I in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns right now. So I can't complain. I mean, Iowa putting up 31 points, that's stupendous compared to last year and the year before when the Iowa offense was the ongoing laughingstock, the joke of college football on offense. And this year, I just happened to look. I mean, Iowa's offense right now, post-week 4, total offense, Iowa is 73rd in the nation. If Iowa does that, if they keep that up, and I've said this for 3 seasons since I've been on the air here for the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, if Iowa can be a top 2/3 of total offense, if they can be basically 99th or better in total offense, and the defense and special teams play the way that we're accustomed to, they're going to be in it till the very end. They're going to be right there contending for Big Ten titles, or at least Big Ten championship game appearances. I mean, they're 73rd in total offense. I absolutely will take that. So Tim Lester is definitely improving. I mean, so far it's been a success, this new vamped offense, but we need to see more from the quarterback. We've got to see our wide receivers get involved. It can't always be check down Charlies to the fullback or running back out of the backfield, or hit your tight ends on little bootlegs. Yes, maybe those will move the chains, but they're not going to be big gainers, or they're not going to be game-breaking plays. Okay, they're not going to overall be deciding factors. They're not. Do something. Man, all right. that's enough with that. The other thing, what I would have liked to seen in this game, Iowa 31-14. They get the ball back with just under 8 minutes to go. I think it's 7:56 left. The game is totally in hand. At that point, I said, give Brendan Sullivan, give him a couple of sequences on offense. And I like how they're using quarterback, number 2 quarterback, Brendan Sullivan, the number 2 quarterback. He really is there to go first and goal or first or second and goal. Basically, they're to go their goal quarterback right now. He's coming in because he is way more mobile and versatile than Cade McNamara. I love how Tim Lester is utilizing him inside that 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line. I wish it would have been a couple games sooner because that's what kept Iowa out of the end zone in that Iowa State game. Maybe it would have been a different outcome. But I love how they're using him there, but they're not really giving him the opportunity to be the maestro of that Iowa offense, of that symphony, as far as a legit or a normal sequence or reps. They're just not. So at that point, I thought, get him in there. Cade McNamara took that series. Iowa punted back to Minnesota. The Iowa defense then, off of a tip ball, they created the second interception of Minnesota. So now I think there's just under 5 minutes to go, and I'm thinking, you got to put Sullivan out there. Give him some reps. Let him take over to see what he can do. And they still trotted Cade McNamara out there. It boggles my mind. You've got to get this guy some reps. He may not be our quarterback this season, but he will be our quarterback moving forward for next year. You've got to get him on the field, give him some sequences, give him some reps. So I was really disappointed by that. I just was. All right. And first of all, I want to hear from you. Please give me your comments. I can't wait to hear. I always ask for, wish for, welcome, and encourage any sort of comments. Please comment below. Let me know what you think about the game, about my takes. So where do we go from here? I already mentioned Iowa has an off week as they prepare for the big showdown against Ohio State inside the Horseshoe there in Columbus in 2 weeks. Minnesota, they have another rivalry game on the docket this coming week. They travel to the Big House to take on Michigan as they battle for the Little Brown Jug. I love all of the Big Ten rivalry trophies. How could you not? Michigan coming off that big-time emotional victory over the weekend against USC. Going to be a good game. Definitely going to be physical, and I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I do like this Minnesota team, the physicality. They know who they are. They have an identity. I think they will keep it close ultimately against Michigan. And that's maybe my question for you. I love me some PJ Fleck. Minnesota fans, thank you for being here. Yes, you're a rival. You're a Big Ten opponent. But I have no ill will against Goldie or any of you. I think it's a fun rivalry, one of my favorite. It was my father's favorite rivalry game, so he always said, we want the pig. A lot of mutual respect, all right? But I love me some PJ Fleck. I love the bald-headed beauty. I love how he speaks. He's inspirational. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily crazy about his persona. You know, he's that Pentecostal type minister. I totally dig it. I do. If he told me to get a PJ Fleck tat on my left cheek, I would absolutely do it. But I'm a little bit torn. And I love the look on the sideline too. The vest or the coat and the tie. I love it. It's a throwback. But I'm a little bit conflicted as a PJ Fleck fan. And I want to hear from you Minnesota fans, Hawkeye fans, any of you college football fans, that I myself kind of expected a little bit more at this point from PJ Fleck at Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying I don't believe that his tenure has been a disappointment. I'm not saying that. It's been good, but I don't think it's necessarily been great. I mean, yes, Minnesota's had a couple of double-digit winning seasons while he's been there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I know that is a tough job. It is, but I just don't know. I'm a little conflicted. I want to hear from you. Do you think so far the PJ Fleck tenure has been good, bad? Has it exceeded expectations? Has it fallen flat? Has it been a failure? Is it what is it? It's just what it is. It's good. Let me know, because I'm a little bit conflicted on that. That's my question for you this week. Anyway, thank you for watching the episode. I'm sorry this came out a couple days late, like I said. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. This is just a hobby for me. I mean, it's an absolute pleasure that I'm here with you on the weekly, sharing my love of all things college football with you and yours. If I had to do this daily, that's a job, and I already have a job. That sounds like way too much work. This is strictly hobby. So please get involved. Tell your fellow college football fans about the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, because I want to find more college football fans just like you. Get involved, exercise your college football voice, comment below, like, share, subscribe. I can't wait to hear from you. I promise I'll get back to each and every one of you much sooner than later via those comments. And I will be back later this week for my Week 5 preview and picks episode. I was not able to get in my Week 4 preview and picks last week because I have been just so uber busy. I feel like I'm drowning right now, but I will be back later this week. So please click that subscribe button, get notifications, and until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for watching the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.